After reflecting on the last 5 decades, I've come to realize that I have a story. One of my music and my sound, and the marvelous collaborations with friends and colleagues. With a little help from these friends, I will share with you the journey that has shaped my musical life. I suppose every musician has a story, and my story is not new, but it is mine. Welcome to The Path Taken, hosted by Tom Farley and Alton Riddick.
From the High Energy Acoustics Band live album, Tom Farley featuring Joanna Binford, 69 Pimpmobile.
With my hitchhiking mama, but ended up traveling alone. I was stuck outside of a Binford news, stranded in the freezing rain. Praying if I ever sat on a driver, I would promise never to complain. And the next set of lights pulled up on the right. I thought that it couldn't be real, cause I caught myself a ride with the electro light in a 69 Pimpmobile. It had a red leather roof and the bottom was black, and with the curtains and back. It had dice on the mirrors, struts on the floor, flag on the tin of the radio. It had buckets in front, pins in the rear, and a straight transition with 7 different gears. I said, oh my God, put down the number. I simply can't believe that it's true. Cruising down the interstate at 90 miles an hour, don't give me time to take in the view. Oh Lord, the driver wasn't stitches. I was shitting in my britches. I thought my ancient days were through. Hang on, son, we'll get there on time. DC just a little farther down the line. From the circuit because of his insanity. He said, I got a raw deal, asked me how would I feel if it would happen to me. And I told him I was lying, baby, try to salvage my dignity. And he said, you're right, I think that I might, cause I'm the best damn driver alive. And just to prove a point, he lit up a joint and shoved it into overdrive. And I said, oh my God, put down the number, I simply can't believe that it's true. Cruising down the interstate at 90 miles an hour, no give me time to take in the view. Oh Lord, the driver wasn't stitches, I was shitting in my britches, I thought my engine days were through. He said, hang on son, we'll get there on time. PC just Damn.
Good morning, Joanna.
Good morning, Tom.
Listen, I was looking on your Facebook page. Oh, by the way, sorry, I was belated. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much.
I don't know where I was that morning, but I definitely wasn't on the birthday page. I was thinking, looking back on this, on how we actually met, because we really kind of truly connected in 2015 and 2016. But I had left Wesleyan, on 2014. So Stephen had to be a major, connection point on that. Do you remember exactly how we kind of put it together, so to speak?
I remember because, Stephen moved here from Kentucky in 2013, right? And this is before I moved here because I had to close up my studio in Lexington, Kentucky. So then I came in May, and I just remember, Stephen was trying to find things for me to do. He wanted to be happy because this move was for him, which was very sweet of him. So I remember him coming home and saying, I've met someone, a guy named Tom Farley, and I think you need to meet him. And I suspect that he said something about Tommy Emmanuel, and that kind of piqued your interest. And I just I don't remember if you called me or if I just showed up at that little coffee house where you all
Daily Grind.
Yeah, the Daily Grind. And I think I just showed up with my instrument. You said I'm playing, and I brought my instrument, and maybe just started jamming. I don't remember us really talking before then.
Yeah. I mean, I don't either. I mean, we weren't like formally introduced, that kind of thing. And so I remembered how the connection was made, but I know Stephen was a big part of it. And, what a great guy.
Yeah, he is. I'll keep him.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're one of the few really classically trained, classically performing musicians that I know, that I've worked with or even know. And so I consider you something really, really special in my life. And I wanted to, to give people a little bit of background of how you got into, just being a musician and some of the highlights that you've had in your career and stuff. So, what started you on your journey? Well, what actually got you starting playing violin or viola or whatever instrument? Well,
I have to tell you, in my family growing up, music, art was just infused into our beings from the very beginning. My mother was a visual artist, trained in England. She grew up in England. And my dad met her after he graduated from the University of Kentucky, and he was modeling in a loincloth at her art school, and that's how they met. And eventually they got together and they got married, and then they came back to the States because my dad was a history professor. And I was born about a year later. And music was always in the house. My mother grew up on opera in England. Her father would take her to the opera at Covent Garden. My dad, very fascinating man, lots of records. The three that come to mind that I remember growing up with are the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band, and there was a recording of Marlene Dietrich. It was a live album. Can you imagine a live? This is ancient. Her picture on the cover, you could practically smell the smoke in the bar.
It was like 30s or 40s or something like that?
It must have been the 30s because you can hear glasses clinking. I mean, this is really old. And then the other one was a Bartok string quartet collection by the Old Fine Art String Quartet. So right there, I've got this wild, and the fourth one, African drumming.
Get out.
From, I don't remember what country. Oh, fifth one, Irish drinking songs. So these are the albums that I'm growing up with. I mean, and just to paint this picture, I mean, a lot of people, when they're growing up in a family, see music hierarchical, like classical is best, or they hate it, or, country, they hate it. That just didn't exist in my childhood. It was like all music was even. Some was better than others. And my dad would equate that to beer. He liked beer. All beer is good. Some's better than others. All music is good. Some's better than others, but not necessarily by genre or style. It depended on the artist. So, music was just always there. I remember my father giving me a recorder when I was about 6, And with the recorder came a booklet, and I really couldn't read that well, but they had the fingers, the finger patterns. And I remember figuring out how to put my fingers on the holes and playing sounds. So I kind of taught myself to read music in a fashion at a very young age, probably, in other words, visually more connected than, say, orally. But my brother was exactly the opposite. He was more oral. So, and my sister Kate was a singer and learned how to play oboe and clarinet later. And my other sister Liza sang all the time. And she eventually took up the violin. I didn't actually start playing a violin until I was in 5th grade. And that was because my best friend Mary played. That was my sole reasoning.
Did you guys play together all the time?
Oh, we played in the school orchestra. It was in 5th grade. And she said, "Oh, look, Mr. Farrar," Ned Farrar, I'll never forget. And it ended up his brother taught my brother cello later on. She said, there's only 2 instruments left, clarinet and violin. You have to pick one. And I asked my dad when I went home, and he said, "Well, you probably better pick the violin because there are more opportunities in orchestra." So he was already steering me toward the classical angle. And I said, "Oh, that makes sense." I didn't think about fiddling because even though I knew about bluegrass, it just wasn't really in our house that much. Dad had a banjo and he kind of plunked around, but we didn't talk about the style of bluegrass. I didn't hang out with bluegrass musicians until much later in life. But basically, I chose the violin because my best friend married it. That tells you something about how my approach to life. It's all my social connections who I want to hang with.
Well, it's amazing, myself included, how school could actually provide the opportunities. I know the recorder thing was elementary school. Everybody got a little black, recorder thing, and that kind of just introduced you to some hands-on kinetic, stuff. School's a great place. We didn't have, I guess you could say, programs that were, anywhere near as expansive like with violins and stuff. But, they did have, elementary school bands and stuff like that. And what a great way to, to open up things, so to speak. So let me ask you this. Do you consider, you talk about your family, everybody kind of being involved. Do you consider, I guess you could say that your biggest inspiration for playing, or do you, pull from something else?
Well, I would say the foundation is definitely with my family. I'm still to this day highly influenced by my siblings. My brother is a really fine cellist. My sister Kate really went into art history, but loves to sing and loves listen to recordings, especially classical music and some pop stuff too. And then Liza is my youngest sister. She is really doing music through healing. So she does a lot of Reiki, and she does a lot of sound and healing with touch and just by vibrations. So I would say critical to what I'm doing now and the freedom with which I play is basically because of what Liza and Patrick started doing probably, 15 or 20 years ago. They started doing improv, like free improv. And I remember hearing them doing it, thinking, what the heck are they doing? And then I saw, I can't do that. And then I watched them for a while, and I finally figured out, oh, they're just they've got all these sounds and ideas already from other experiences, and they're just like channeling them. So what I did is I started practicing at home, just making up sounds. I mean, we're talking free improv. There's nothing planned here or organized. It's just that it's like, it's almost like, slam poetry, the words are there. You have to practice it, but the words are there and you're rearranging words.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And this is exactly the same thing. Free improv to me is like the oldest form of music. There's nothing wrong with it. You can't play anything wrong because It simply comes out the way it is, and it probably can't be recreated again.
So, as you get older, do you feel like this whole thing becomes like maybe more holistic because you start getting into more, I guess you could say, complex relationships, but maybe the out of doors, maybe nature factors in, stuff like that? I mean, does that all kind of come together to make it all work?
Yeah, I think I'm only hesitating because I've noticed that with my younger students, some have no fear, some don't have any fear. But if I've started them on this idea of me playing like a drone and them playing on one string, they don't have a lot of experiences, but they do have enough experiences in life to make sound and to organize sound. I just have more experience, and my musical toolbox is larger just because I have more experience. But what I like is that free improv can be taken from nature. It can be taken from relationships. It can be taken from different emotions. It can be taken just architecture. Sometimes when I'm playing, I'm thinking of a shape. Like I can see a building.
Right.
And I'm going to shape my sound based on what I visually see. Sometimes it's based on color.
That's really pretty cool. It pulls from it seems more than a sensory environment. I mean, it's also mental. When it comes right down to it, there's just this nice blend. Let me ask you this: did this kind of lead you down that pathway to Suzuki? Because you and I have talked about Suzuki method before, and how engaging it is, and how different it is from formal training. So maybe it's a good spot to let people know exactly what Suzuki is, and also how you're into it, how you teach it. What an impact on your life it's been.
So I can definitely tell you that my Suzuki training and my Suzuki adventure started well before my willingness to explore free improvisation.
Right.
Well before. One of my old orchestra friends, Diane Sloan, her mother, and she met Dr. Suzuki, Japanese pedagogue, whose mission in life before and certainly after World War II was to bring the joy of music to children, particularly children who had lost family members. He had noticed through his own experience that children learn their own native tongue. And if anybody can speak English or French or Japanese, then they're smart enough to be able to learn a musical instrument. So this was kind of revolutionary because most of us have been taught you can't be musical or you can't learn an instrument unless you have talent. And he believed the opposite, that anybody could learn how to play an instrument. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be on the stage at Carnegie Hall or get a Grammy, but the fact that anybody can learn how to play, whoa, mind-blowing. So Diane studied with Dr. Suzuki. Her mother wrote a book, You're Rarely Too Young and Never Too Old to Twinkle, because Twinkle Variations is one of the first pieces that little kids learn. Dr. Suzuki believed you could start listening in the mother's womb. You might start formal training when you're at 3 because then you have a little bit more fine motor skill, and yet you're young enough and fascinated enough with learning because very young children love repetition and they love new things. And if the mother learned how to play, then the child would want to learn how to play too.
Understood.
So I started doing this when I was about 20, and I never envisioned myself being a teacher. I have to be honest with you. My dad was a teacher. My mom taught. And I thought, I don't want to do that.
Well, why would you think that about yourself?
Well, because I was a rebel. I didn't want to do what my parents did. I wanted to do something different. But the fact of the matter is, Kay, whose father was Blanton Collier, who was a football coach for the Cleveland Browns, was very ill. And she was teaching Suzuki method. And she said, Joanna, I need for you to teach my students while I'm away taking care of my dad. And I said, Kay, I don't know what I'm doing. And she goes, I'll give you notes. You'll figure it out. So right there was somebody who saw in me something that I either didn't see or didn't want to see, which is
what an incredible intersection.
Yeah, incredible. And I, to this day, I have to say that she's the one that steered me. Diane gave me the book Nurtured by Love when she was graduating from high school. So I had started teaching then. And I had read it and was fascinated by his philosophy. But it was Kay who gave me, basically, talk about throwing somebody into the pool and say, swim. She did.
Yeah.
She knew I played. She knew I was studying at the University of Kentucky. But she'd never seen me teach. I mean, talk about somebody trusting and a person, I guess, of vision. So I taught her students 2 or 3 days a week for like 3 weeks. And she had left me copious notes, and I knew enough to kind of follow the notes and listen carefully and not give too many instructions, just enough to kind of give them something to feed on for the next week.
So were you hooked?
Pretty much after that, I realized, oh, crap, I'm good at this. Okay.
And it all started with a loincloth in England. Who believes all that stuff?
Who knew?
So where are you taking it now? I know that you're really engaged with a lot of students, a lot of classes, and also the fact that COVID has really put a dent in terms of, I guess you could say, group performances and stuff. So, where are you now in terms of your teaching? And, has, even though we have a new variant coming on, have you had a chance to actually, allow your students to perform and, just get back on a somewhat normal kind of, track, so to speak?
So during COVID, we did use technology. First of all, I have to say congratulations to all of my students and all the students in our program at the Academy of Music, Suzuki Strings program, because no one gave up. Kids kept practicing, kids kept playing, parents supported it. The Academy of Music, which has got a $3 million endowment to provide
All right.
music lessons for those families who might have been who might be under financial hardship. They had some more money, so parents who may have lost hours or had lost their jobs temporarily, the kids could keep taking lessons. That was a huge benefit.
Oh, no kidding. That's wonderful.
And the faculty kept getting paid, so we didn't lose our jobs. Like a lot of musicians, especially performing musicians, had nothing. We at least could keep teaching. So I taught all through the summer. I hate to say this to folks, but I made more money last year than I did the year before. And that's because parents could keep taking lessons. I kept getting paid all through the summer. And all through the year, I didn't lose any students. So basically, to keep them playing, we used technology. I had one of our younger teachers was able to use the Adobe Premiere program, and the kids made videos of certain pieces, and she compiled them, and we created a concert online for all the families, and we showcased it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, we had, we showcased it one day on Zoom, and we had over 100 families coming in and watching the videos together and applauding and sending kudos. It was a way of us being together without being together.
Yeah, yeah. Which I'm sure, it's nowhere near as meaningful, or I guess you could say as touching as the face-to-face and getting in a room with them. But, if you can actually spin that in a way,
Well, it was what we needed at the time, right? I'm not saying that I would want to keep doing it. In fact, we only did it one time because it was a huge effort. And I was glad we did it because it kind of wrapped up our spring concert, right? It took the place of our spring concert. Since then, I've been seeing my students in person since last fall. Most people, I had 6 feet of distance. We had windows open. We could teach outside. We all had masks on. And since then, almost everybody in my studio is vaccinated. Not the real little kids, but everybody 12 and up, all the adults. I have to say I've been very fortunate in that folks have been willing to go for it.
Well, it makes good sense.
Yeah. A lot of the kids are still performing, they're making videos of their pieces, and we call them book graduations. They're like 9 or 10 volumes for each instrument. And the kids have been working diligently, getting through new material and then showcasing their material on videos and then sharing the videos with other kids in the program and with their family and friends. So they're still performing. It's not for live audiences, or if they do perform, it's with their families being present. But it's still on a small scale. We are hoping to we also had outdoor group classes, so kids could get together in small groups outside at our church. We're teaching mostly out of Royster Presbyterian in Norfolk now. And that was great because they have these big parking lot fields and big areas around the church. The neighborhood loved it. They were hearing live music. They could walk by with their dogs and hear little kids playing and big kids playing. Kind of exciting.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a weekly festival. We're hoping to go in person indoors in the fall, and we'll just have to see where we're at by the time September rolls around. And we're hoping to do some big concerts in the fall and in the spring. Again, we'll just have to wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, with with COVID, it's that being it's a crapshoot. In a lot of ways. Certainly, I know a lot of the performing musicians that I know. Everybody was getting excited. It's outside, and all of a sudden they started inside, and now boom, things are starting to get stupid ugly again. So I hope that works out. I really do. I'm going to go a little bit more personal with you. I know that you have a great performing career. You got the girls, you got Tommy, you got different orchestras and recording situations that you've been in over the years. Yes. When did you make the breakout to actually start performing in those kinds of situations?
Well, good question. So, as a classical musician, especially, well, it's everywhere. It's in Europe and it's in the U.S. When you start early, you know, in school orchestra, you start when you're like fourth or fifth grade, right? You build social relationships, you build camaraderie. So I was playing in orchestra in high school, playing in youth orchestra in high school. When I went to college, I played in orchestra. So an orchestra always means there's going to be a concert. So I was engineered from the get go for you learn repertoire, you learn songs, you learn pieces, then you perform them. That's just the way it goes, period. If you study privately, you usually have concerts, at least in the classical world. You might have a spring recital where you play a solo. So from early age, I'm engineered toward performing is just part of what you do in your studies. It's not separated out. Then I joined the Lexington Philharmonic. I had to audition for that, and I played there. I think the big thing for me is that, you know, in orchestral world, especially starting in the 70s, they started in creating these, you know, pop concerts because they wanted to draw an audience. You know, the heyday of classical orchestra playing is probably in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s. And that's when a lot of orchestras were created in the U.S. It's not really deep part of our culture like it is in Europe.
Well, let me ask you: were you still playing violin, or were you on viola by now?
Well, I switched to viola in the summer of my senior year, getting ready. I just graduated from high school, and I had a chance to go to a chamber camp at Stevens Point, which was at that point a Suzuki camp, even though I hadn't really studied Suzuki at that point. I'll never forget. It was Marvin Raven, great violist, and what a great conductor. That's the sexiest man I've ever met in my life. Anyway, where was I going with this? How did I mean? And that is where I really fell in love with the viola. And so then when I went to college, I wasn't really officially a music major, but they had given me a violin scholarship. And I told them I wanted to play viola, and they weren't happy. So I had to play violin and viola for 1 year. And then after that, they finally gave up and said, yeah, you're really a violist. We give up. Because it's not that I didn't like the violin. I was just far more fascinated with the viola because it's a lower instrument. It's more, I think, connected to the human voice. So that's when I really made the switch there. But as far as in the Lexington Philharmonic, I was definitely playing viola. And that's where, when they started introducing these pop concerts, you know, playing with, I'm just trying to remember. I remember playing with Chet Atkins. Well, that was way back in the day. That must have been the late 70s. And I remember, I'm so dumb. I remember walking on stage saying, God, who is this guy? What do I care? Doom, check-a-doom, check-a-doom, check. I thought, and I to this day, I mean, I'm still embarrassed about my attitude. It was just so snobby. And of course, it ends up, I'm playing in a quartet that plays at the Chet Atkins Convention.
Yeah.
Every year since 2006.
Well, talk about you and the girls for a little bit. What a wonderful, you know, musical situation that has been for you over the years.
Again, built on relationships, long-standing relationships. Julie Lastinger, the first violinist. I have known Julie since youth orchestra days. So since I was about 14. And I'm now 62. That tells you something. And we're both the same age. She's slightly older, but she doesn't like to talk about it. And then the second violinist, Tina Simpson. I've known Tina, since our 20s. So, yeah, you can do the math, probably 40 years or so. And then the youngest one, the baby in the group, is the cellist. And I've known her for at least a good 20 years. So we've known each other. And we've known each other in musical circles, playing in orchestra together, playing small chamber groups, playing freelance gigs. You know, if a church calls, we need a quartet for Easter morning, that kind of stuff. A lot of freelance. We've done a lot of different gigs. And the connection really, you know, came with Tommy, because that's how the Endless Road Strings formed.
Right.
Because Tommy came and played with the Lexington Philharmonic. I don't think I even played that concert, but Julie, Tina, and Rebecca did. So I don't remember the year, maybe around 2000. And Julie started really following his career and went to a few concerts that were close by, ended up, you know, probably going to some breakfast dive after a gig with him and a few other friends. And, she said, Tom, if you ever decide that you want to play a place and you just want a string quartet instead of orchestra, let me know and we'll get something together. The guy who arranged the orchestral chart, Sean O'Boyle from Australia, I guess Tommy called him and said, redo some of those charts for string quartet. He did. And then Tommy said, I'm playing in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. I want you guys to come. So we drove up. I'm sitting down. I think I'd met him once before at another Philharmonic gig. And we played, and I remember thinking, oh, I'm in a whole nother universe here. This is a whole nother musical experience because Tommy doesn't read a lick of music. Everything is by ear, and he has an incredible amount of experience. I mean, Tommy's one of the few people that he hears something once and it's there.
Which is always, amazing, to even hang out with people like that, much less be engaged in a serious, musical enterprise.
Oh, yeah. And that's when I knew, that snobbery needs to go way back down in that gully. It has no place here. This guy's the deal. And I remember holding on for my dear life a couple of times. He was playing classical gas and he was on fire. I mean, he was going fast. I'm going, oh, crap. Here we go.
Well, you also, not only with Tommy, you all went on tour with him for what, a couple years?
No,
or at least 2 tours?
It was one tour in the summer of 2008. Because I think we first played with him in 2003, if that's correct. And then we started playing at the Chet Atkins Convention in 2006. And I remember folks coming up saying, when are you going to play with Tommy on tour? And we're thinking, Tommy on tour? That's a whole nother ball game. I mean, we're not expensive, but our 4 women traveling, separate rooms, airfares, instrument. The cello has to have its own seat on the plane.
Understood.
It ain't cheap. So, and then one day he just called up Julie and said, "You want to come to Germany with me?" And she goes, "Yes." Let me call the girls. I got the call. I screamed. And then, the next thing I know, his manager at the time, Gina, made all the travel arrangements. And we did some concerts in Germany. And we went to Poland. Well, you can tell. All I can tell you is you can really tell a difference when you're driving from Germany. All of a sudden you hit Poland and the roads change, folks. I feel like I'm in, going from central Kentucky to the worst part of eastern Kentucky. The roads change. And you have to pay to go to the toilet in Poland.
Yuck.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
I don't know, but they're pretty stinky too. But it was great. It was a great honor and a gift that Tommy gave us. It was a great time. I would say that was the huge landmark in my playing career. So,
you all made your own album. The one thing I really loved about that was some of the arrangements you had actually done yourself, and some of the other girls did too. I mean, how did that come about? I mean, was that a long process of collaboration with several different people, or was it, just let's just sit down and do this thing?
Well, first, we decided we wanted to make an album because the pressure to make one from all the folks who attend the Chet Atkins Convention was enormous. When are you going to do an album? When are you going to do an album? And we had talked about different ways of doing the album, but one way I wanted to do it was just do 14 or 15 tracks with the various guitarists that we had played with.
Good approach.
We also had, the charts that Sean had already done. So those were a reference point. I think the big thing was Tina, who's our second violinist. Tina started experimenting. I mean, actually we started, I'll be honest with you, with Tommy while we were on tour. Because Tina had written a chart just by ear. Actually, I have to back up further than that. It started before Tommy. We started working with a guitarist named Pat Kirtley and a couple Australians, Matt and Polly Zarb, way back in the early 2000s. And we knew nothing about writing charts. I mean, we knew key signatures, but actually arranging, that was new to us. And we were doing everything by ear. And I remember sitting in Tina's back room with Pat Kirtley, and he had sent us these recordings, and he's going through saying, now this is a D chord and this is a C chord, and we do a sus chord. And I'm going, what the hell is a sus chord? I mean, and you talk about theory 101, jumping up to theory 601. I mean, I knew chords, but I didn't know that verbiage that a lot of guitarists use. And guitarists are kind of, they pride themselves on inventing the weirdest kind of chord configurations with their fingers you've ever seen.
Yeah, they do that.
And so I'd forgotten, gosh, I've still got those old charts, me writing down chord names and trying to figure out how am I going to arrange this? Because I'm the viola player. I often play the third of the chord. How do I do my voice? We don't want to all play the same note at the same time. We're basically doing this all by ear. So this was a whole nother adventure for us. So I would say we did that we played some concerts like that where we had hardly anything written down. I had like a chord chart and that's it. We've never done it this way again. We did it for 2 years like this. Then when we went on tour with Tom, we used Sean's charts, but then Tom wanted us to do Saltwater, which is a Julian Lennon song. And Tina had written a basic chart on her own. She just took the initiative and just did it using Finale. And he didn't like a few things, so we changed it. He actually sat in a room with us in Germany. It was a hotel lounge. He got one of the rooms and we sat there and we argued and we fought, mostly me and Julie fighting because that's what we do because we're like sisters. And then, what's going to work here? What's going to work there? And it was just like a marriage and you're trying to figure out how to talk to each other without killing each other, without saying things you're going to regret because you have you're fighting for your voice in the group. And we ended up with a chart that we still use to this day.
Really?
Yeah. And I have to say, Tommy was, I'd forgotten how influential he was in helping us figure out what was going to work. Here's what I'm doing in my part. Can you imitate that? Or can you play something like that with me in that one little spot? He was incredibly influential in how we approach charts now.
Yeah, but the results, I've seen the videos of you all in concert, and the results were amazing. Certainly, the man's got more energy than anybody ever deserves. I mean, anybody who loves Tommy knows what I'm talking about. And to be able to keep time with him and sound so good, I mean, it must have felt really, really great in terms of not having that strict, we're going by note on the chart thing. To have that almost like improvisation kind of way of dealing with it was training that most classical people have no clue. Give me my chart or send me down the road because I can't do it if I haven't got it in front of me.
Well, I think it's interesting to me because I know that my classical training has grounded me technically in what I'm able to do. But it's also the art of chamber music and classical music is that idea of taking what's on the page and creating something with the people that you're sitting with. It's unfortunate that a lot of classical musicians get almost suppressed in their playing by thinking that they have to play the way the composer intended. And that's almost just like a killer of the vibe. It's a killer of your own creativity. Yes, you want to honor what the composer. They're a musical creative person. They have written this down with dots, but I'm using that as a springboard. I do want to. When I'm playing a Haydn quartet, I want to think about how was the viola made back then? What was the bow? What kind of sounds? They didn't have any. Chamber music then was made for a small venue. It wasn't made for a large venue. They used different strings. I kind of use that knowledge to better inform me of how I want to play today. Now I have a modern viola. I have a modern bow. I have different strings. I'm using aluminum wound strings or metal strings. I'm not using gut strings. So my approach is going to be more fuller, more resonating, bigger sound meant for a bigger concert hall. All of that stuff influences my performance of a piece.
Well, let me ask you this. When you're working with a conductor, how many conductors understand that premise? I mean, the whole idea of knowing the musicians that they have, in their group and pulling them together to give that, I don't know, it's almost a more human approach to, I guess you could say, the overall playing together experience. I mean, are conductors like that, or are they very, very, I guess it changes by conductor, but are they very strict in terms of following the notation?
Well, it definitely depends on the conductor. I'm probably not the best person to talk to about conductors because and part of it is my personality. I tend to buck authority in general, and I tend to question authority. My view is somebody needs to be in charge in an orchestra. There's no doubt about it. You got 60 or 70 players on stage. Everybody can't have their opinion at that time. I mean, you otherwise you'll be there for hours, days, trying to negotiate one single measure or one single phrase. You got to have somebody in charge. A great conductor is someone who has incredible confidence in their knowledge and their study of the score. They know what they want. And at the same time, and this is the magic point, they have to trust the players. And some conductors don't trust their players. And that's why you get somebody who's trying to organize and control everything because they don't trust the players on the stage. Probably one of the best conductors for that was Leonard Bernstein, who would be on the podium. New York Philharmonic players in general loved him. They admired him, they appreciated him, and he let them play. I'm not saying he didn't argue with them or didn't wreak havoc at times, but generally speaking, he honored. I think because he was such a player himself, he really honored the players. And if you have a conductor who's willing to do that, you can really build a beautiful relationship. It's tough in the U.S. because we expect a lot of the conductors. You have to not only know your score, you have to not only know the stick technique because you're communicating with your players.
Yeah.
My big thing is if you can't show me that your upbeat matches your downbeat, I don't have much time for you. And I can tell right away, boom, boom. If those don't match, I'm like, oh, here we go. I don't care how nice you are. I just don't have a lot of time for you. But conductors here have to also do a lot of fundraising. They have to schmooze with the audience because the orchestras don't make a lot of money. In Europe, a lot of the orchestras are still subsidized by the government. So they don't have to schmooze quite as much. Here, you have to be a marketer. You have to be able to get along with people. So your time gets taken away.
I understand.
You have a huge, huge job.
Well, just to piggyback on that whole thing about approach, to the music and everything, I have to admit, when we first got together at the Cosmopolitan to work on Tip of the Hat, I read your resume. I knew where you were coming from. We had played together some at Daily Grind. And my biggest fear, which you basically put to rest immediately, my biggest fear was, how do I communicate with this classically trained musician, me being a do-it-yourself, learn it on my own kind of guy, can't read a lick of music. Can we actually come to some kind of way of communicating to where we can put down what we need? And it was immediate. That was the beautiful thing about it. You put me at ease in terms of working with me. There were certain elements, I guess you could say, not so much of the performance, but just I can remember that I finished one thing and then we were listening to it. And you said, "There's one out of tune note right there. I need to do that over again. I need to do that over again." And I listened to it and I couldn't hear it, but you did. And so we were able to weave a really, really nice. I like to consider, it's almost like it's a waltz. It's a three-quarter time. It's almost like you're waltzing together. And to be able to actually work that out, first time out, working with you was wonderful. And I now I understand, where that understanding and that, that workability comes from, because you've had a whole history of it.
Yeah, I'm old, Tom.
Oh, geez. Some people talk about letting it go, and some people hide it where the light never shows. Some talk in petition, and some never care. Life is a road sign, state of repair. 'Cause you're not really living if you're living a lie. and you can't feel the breeze as the wind rushes by. Don't try to determine or think it all through. A tip of the hat is all you can do. Spend my life teaching and sharing my mind. The best conversations you ever will find. Oh, some will dismiss you as less than you are, but the ones that embrace you are better by far. We can try moving forward and keep it on track, but we're always reminded it's the vision they lack. So now I'm retired, I'm finished at last, so the dean and my AD can both kiss my ass. 'Cause they're not really living if they're living a lie, and they can't feel the breeze as the wind rushes by. Don't try to determine or think it all through. A tip of the hat is all you can do. Well, listen, what people who have heard you play and can catch you on videos and stuff, some of them really like to know some of the particulars. Like, what is the name of the instrument that you play? I mean, who made that instrument, and what do you suggest in terms of people who are starting in viola? What advice would you get them to get them as far as an instrument or whatever to get them into playing and really enjoy the experience?
Well, fortunately, at least around here, if the younger the better. I'm always going to say that the younger the better. If you're interested in an instrument, start listening to lots of different recordings. The good news is good and bad news about all these recordings. But the good news is you can go to YouTube, you can go to Spotify, Amazon Music, variety of sources if you don't have CDs at home, and listen to all different kinds of styles. Listen to all different kinds of instruments. Find one that you just genuinely love. And I think finding someone that you want to work with is really important because they can steer you in the right direction. I've noticed that guitar world is really different. A lot of guitar teachers will tell you, I have a student for, they'll have a student for like 8 to 12 weeks and then the student will leave and do something else. I've noticed that also with voice teachers. But in my world, I start a student and a lot of my students stay with me until they graduate from high school.
Really?
Oh yeah. They stick with me.
So it's a serious relationship.
Yeah. Because I when I say forging relationships is at least in my learning experience key. I think it's key in my teaching too,
Oh, absolutely. I can understand that.
I play now the viola, which looks like a violin but bigger. It's older than the violin, um, as an instrument. The one I'm playing right now is by Hart and Sons, an English viola, probably made in 1890. Um, it's the wood itself is very old. I can tell by the grain, but the varnish is kind of sloppy. So I'm thinking these guys got together in this small little shop, drank a lot of beer, and slapped something together here. I wouldn't say it's the prettiest instrument in the world, but it has a nice sound. That's my primary viola. The other one I have that it's plugged in, and then I'll use when we play with Tommy because it's got a Baggs pickup on it, is my LeMay viola that was made in 1982. It was the last instrument he made no, 1980. Yeah, before he died, Lawrence LeMay. And it's a nice viola. It doesn't have the ringing resonant sound that my English viola does, but it's good.
Well, let me ask you, all these years, all the different situations and all the playing, do you think that Joanna has developed her own style? I mean, everybody, it kind of goes for that to a certain extent. A lot of it's just through how well you can work in collaborations. But is there an aspect that you actually consider that's just yours, that you can bring to the plate at any time that you're playing with anybody?
Well, I think it's probably going to come out more in my improv work when I'm doing it like a free improv. I would say that, yeah, I would say it's eclectic. I tend to, when I'm doing an improv, play quickly. I have a lot of trills. I have there's just gestures that come out in my playing that are different than I would say, like my brother doing an improv. He tends to be more lyrical, long, sustained tones. Mine tend to be quick, little bird-like motions, and then I might do something sustained. So I can tell that my personality is coming out of there. It's a little bit more extroverted. It's a little bit more quick, almost kind of like a nervous energy.
Yeah.
In my classical playing, that's really hard for me to describe. I've never really thought about having necessarily my own sound. I think about a group sound. I guess when I'm playing by myself, like if I'm playing solo Bach, I really want to think about shaping it so that it's almost like telling a story. There's obviously a beginning, and then there's a journey, there's an adventure. And I want it to be a journey in sound and harmony. So in that case, I'm really thinking about the composer and what the composer was doing. Bach was really thinking about harmony. That was his main element.
So do you find that seems to me like you can't pull that off unless other musicians have that frame of mind as well. In other
If
words,
I'm playing in a group, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. We have to share. And my personality is a little bit more flexible than some people I play with. They tend to be a little bit more, I don't want to say narrow, but I don't even want to say confident. You know how some people are when you work, they have a gig, they do their work, and they're a little bit inflexible as far as thinking outside the box. So when I play with people like that, I think I have the personality that I can go, okay, that's their sound. I can go with that.
Well, I can tell you one, when you say that your personal improv thing is kind of eclectic, one of the things that just blew me away was when I was mixing.
Oh yeah, thanks for mixing, and thanks for mixing me so well. I appreciate that.
I mean, on Pimpmobile, you had your solo. It was the first solo that we had, but at the end of your solo, of course, your solo had that had a really, really nice movements in it. But at the end of your solo, you had this thing that you did, which kind of like was a trill that just kind of faded out and just led right into the next musician. And you did it again when it went into the instrumental part of at the end. It was the absolute perfect transition, and it was live, it was in color, it was not rehearsed. It's like, where the hell did that come from? That's absolutely friggin' perfect. So I mean, that was what made that particular gig a lot of fun. But I can understand how I've played with other violinists before. I've never played with anybody that had that kind of energy and spontaneity that you had. Most of them go to the, like if it's country or bluegrass, they'll go to the classic riffs and stuff like that. What you played with us was anything but classic, but fit like a glove. So, I mean, that just made it all the more, fun. So I understand where you're coming from.
And I have to say that, I have been very fortunate that you've been so, shall we say, patient with me. Because there are times when, I'm not always quick to the draw. But you're patient, and you were willing to sit down and play with me at different times. I mean, one of my favorite memories is always going to be coming to your place at your old apartment, and Tanya sitting in there with the dog, and you're playing guitar. And I think we were doing like maybe some Landslide or something, which, by the way, she still sounds freaking good on.
Yeah, she does. Gotta love her.
And I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't Landslide, but I remember she turned to you and she goes, "Where are my notes?" Because you were supposed to do something in particular. She's waiting for her notes. She's waiting for you to do like a little turn. And you said, "There it is." She goes, "No, that's not good enough. Do it again." I really don't But I also, I have to say, one of my favorite songs ever, and I really mean this, is that, is it the Jody Carroll? Oh my God.
Jody Lee Carroll,
Jody Lee Carroll. Gosh, Tom, that is just like a work of art to me. I mean, that's high art in my world, because it's emotional, it's intellectual, it's got form, it's got shape. It goes places where you don't think it's going to go. And when you guys did it at the live concert, I couldn't believe it came off, because that's not an easy tune to put together.
Sits in the window of the Monticello Hotel. He thinks to himself, there are no more tomorrows, no more stories to tell. He's a long-haired country boy living in the city, tired of paying the price, trying to recall the moment in time when the blood in his veins turned to ice. Collected as he moves to the table and holds a spike in his hand. Sever your relations with a smooth, easy motion. The potion will meet your demand. With his mind in the days, he passes his way through the memory of things that have been. And like the unsung martyr, he takes to the streets as the black of the night rushes in. The end is near, the handle is slipped, and he knows that he's ready to die. And with his face to the ground, he loses his grip as the roar of the wheels pass him by. Oh, pass him by. Oh, pass him by. Oh, pass him by. On my days in the city, I almost want to break down and cry through the razor eyes in a canyon of light. The better part of me died.
Well, I think what really made that happen more than anything else, I sit back and I listen to everybody's performance on that. I still, it's amazing. I'll go back and I listen to music after having my little, music playing thing every night. I sit back and listen to music, and Joey Lee Carroll is one of the ones I do listen to because I have to give Ken McNeil, a huge, gigantic, chunk of the credit for that one coming off so well, because he played that almost lick for lick with the album licks that were in there, which my brother-in-law Steve made some really nice moves. I never expect everybody wants to put their own this, that, or the other on it. I never expected that to actually be that well structured with only we must have rehearsed that 20 minutes, 5 days before, and all of a sudden we're on stage. It's like, geez, I can't believe that everybody was so tight and so together, and the understanding of that song, and that we pulled it off so well live and in color, one time, Maybe that happens a lot with other people, but it doesn't happen a lot with me.
You know what? I don't know. Well, maybe it does. It's happened to me before with special moments. I mean, I didn't play on that song. I was so happy just to sit there and listen, because it's one of my favorite tunes that you've written. But I have to say that I think it can't. I have played with some great artists where we've crashed and burned. I've played with some, less than artists that we've crashed and burned. Every once in a while, things just come together. And that was definitely one of those moments where it just came together.
Yeah, it did. Well, also, but you may not remember, but you did play on that song.
I did?
Yeah, you were one of the critical parts. One of the critical parts of that song is da 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 da, and somebody had to hold that down, and it was you.
That's right. I forgot.
That's right. You did forget.
We added that in, didn't we?
No, no. The bottom line is, it was there. You played that. I mean, the whole idea of that's the one thing I think that we established in rehearsal was,
That's right.
okay, Greg's going to take the lead here, but I need, that was done with guitars on the original recording. I need something to anchor that, because without that, the song just collapses. And there you were.
That's right. Now I remember, because I listened to, I just remember, I didn't have to play all the time though, did I?
No. Basically, it was mostly in the instrumental transitions, and in the vocal parts, you did a rhythmic thing that basically went along with Pete and Ken's movement. So it ended up being perfect. But at the end of the day, without that repetitive da 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 thing in there, the song just would have not made any sense at all. And you were right there on that, guy.
This is yet another example of the way my brain works. I was so in the song that I forgot that I was in the song. Does that make sense? I mean, I could hear the song, but and now I remember us talking about rehearsal. I vaguely remember playing it now but I can hear the song, but I'm not thinking about what I'm doing in the song. I believe you. I was there. Now I remember hearing it in when you sent me the recording. But it's just that it's one example to me that the sound is being made, but I'm not thinking about my participation. It's so organic.
Yeah. Understood.
Wow. Thank you for reminding me.
Well, I mean, we've had some nice moments there. Like when we were working on Here I Go Again, you had your solo part in there, but also I had that little lap steel thing. And, we hadn't done anything with it. You had done the solo and stuff, but there was something missing in the lap steel thing. And I asked you, I said, could you put a harmonic double on a couple of measures on this thing? And boom, it was right there. It was exactly what was needed. And the sound of your viola blended so nicely with the lap steel. I mean, and so engineering that was a ton of fun. We've had a lot of nice moments like that. We're going to have more. Just want you to know that. I mean, it's a never ending thing. But at the end of the day, I don't mind telling you that I've only had experience with probably two. You and Bernie Lee on keyboards. Got Bernie into the studio, and I always respected his talent. And we had worked once with Bob Smith at a charity gig where he was part of the band, I was part of the band, and I loved the way that he played. But when I got him in, I invited him over to do a song, and I got him in, and we had never communicated music before. And so he had a language, and most of it was like, okay, do you want me to take the third or should I drop to a sixth? Which, you're talking freaking Greek to me when you're doing that kind of stuff. And so within a course of 10 or 15 minutes, we developed a language which we could communicate, and it ended up being a great keyboard session. As a matter of fact, after the whole thing was over, we were at the Cosmo and went out, made us some drinks, went out on the patio and sat there and talked for an hour. I had ever really had a decent conversation with the man. So, I feel like in a lot of ways, maybe my musical career has been, shortchanged because I never was able to read music. So I couldn't get in with classical or with jazz musicians who sit there with their tabs and, and just flip the page and they're on to something else. I feel like in a way I missed out on something, but then again, I think back on all the other stuff. And I say, maybe I just didn't have the time for that. I didn't pick up on it. So, but, between you and Bernie, I feel much more comfortable in communicating and certainly having fun with people who are more classically trained than me, because you all have something that most classical musicians don't, which is a very good understanding of how guys like me work.
In the middle of the river, I can see both sides. In the middle of the river, I can roll with the tide. In the middle of the river, I can see things clear. In the middle of the river, I can feel you are near. Oh, I try to explain. Oh, my, Getting by with the loss and the gain. Gonna fly right out of my pain. Here I go again. On the side of a mountain, I can watch the birds fly. On the side of a mountain, I can see the clouds cry. On the side of the mountain, the valley lies low. On the side of a mountain, you can see where to go. Oh, I try to explain. Oh, my walk in the rain. Getting by with the loss and the gain. Gonna fly right out of my pain. Here I go again.
Yeah, and I honestly think, I'm an older generation player. I'm 62 now, but I'm looking at some of these players coming out of conservatory or even just local players here, right?
Yeah.
They're fascinated with other styles of playing. Fascinated.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The player that's in their 20s and 30s, I'm not saying all of them, but they're far more flexible. They're far more interested in different styles of playing, different genres, especially popular things. And one of my students, a guy named, former students, oh my gosh, what's Will's last name? This is embarrassing. Well, I will say Will, who lives in New York now. And he told me he wanted to be a music major. And I thought, now what's Will going to do? I'm not convinced about this. Well, Will basically said, I love you, Joe. Thanks for everything. I'm heading to New York. And by golly, he's making a living. And he's classically trained. He grew up with classical music, but he's doing recording engineering. He's recording people's concerts. He's recording albums for people. He's a freelance musician. I've seen him on a couple of specials where I think, who's that viola player? Holy cow, that's my student. Will Marshall, that's his name. So, Will's probably 30 now. So that generation of player is I think far more flexible than my generation. Julie in our quartet, she loves musicals. Oh my gosh, the girl she's playing every musical she can get her hands on. She loves musicals. The cellist, Rebecca, she is constantly she also is a very fine pianist. She loves show tunes. She loves old popular songs from the 30s. Oh, she's just she's always been fascinated. She grew up with that music with her parents. She was an only child to older parents. And Tina now is playing with a guy named Ned Hill in Nashville. He grew up in Kentucky. He's a singer-songwriter. If y'all ever heard of Ned Hill, look him up. She's playing a lot with him And she's classically trained. She studied in civic orchestra in Chicago, went to the Cincinnati Conservatory on viola, playing mostly violin now. So I think there are players like that in the world, but I would say, at least in my generation, not the majority. Not the majority.
Well, there's in the world of pop music that I've been exposed to my entire life, a lot of the musicians, certainly the ones I've respected the most, who are not classically trained, they'll go out and they'll play rock and roll, they'll play country, but when they go back home, that's not what they're playing, or if they go and sit in with friends, they're sitting back and jamming on something else. They're in another world, whether it's jazz or some kind of a classical arrangement, or they're in a different world. But in the long run, that works out really well because they can translate a little of that spirit into the music that they have, and maybe give themselves a little bit more of a unique style, so to speak, as they play, out in public. But yeah, I understand. Let me ask you one more thing. Out of all the places that you played, there have to have been a couple of nights, either with Tommy or with other people. I also, can you tell me something about the Moody Blues thing? I mean, were you just part of a group that just backed them up string wise with them?
Still part of that whole orchestral way of attracting an audience, right? This is back in Lexington, Kentucky. Moody Blues. We played. Gosh, did we play in the Civic Center? I guess we did. It was a big arena. It was an orchestral gig. I didn't get to meet the guys. I just played. I was like totally, background kind of chart. The one that Moody Blues was really a good gig, but I have to tell you, playing for Rod Stewart was really even more exciting, because with Rod Stewart, we didn't get to meet him at first. He was kind of aloof. His string director or band director was really cool. And we got to, the charts we had never seen. Now that's a gig where you walk in, the chart's on the stand, and you play it. And by God, you better play every note correct in the style. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, give me a couple of minutes here. You walk in, boom. And I remember walking out after the rehearsal into this big convention center. I mean, it's the big Rupp Arena, which you may have seen on, if you watch University of Kentucky basketball ever in NCAA. It's a big arena. And I remember, and there was a box in the middle. Well, Rod Stewart was in the box. They were bringing Rod Stewart out to the stage in the box so no one could see him. And we're all in our black and carrying our instruments, and people are going, what's going on? We get on the stage, and somehow, I don't remember how they got him onto the stage. They probably put him under the stage, and he went up some stairs. And we started playing. And he was really a lot of fun. In fact, after it was over, he came up and talked to us. And I have to tell you, I hope he's not listening to this. He was the smelliest person I've ever met in my life. After because he's really energetic, right? But he smells of bad meat and booze. I don't think he was drinking, but just he sweated so much. And I remember he came out to me, and I had my hand extended, a big smile on my face, happy to meet him. And I went, I could barely breathe. Most pungent man I've ever met in my life. And I do like a sweaty man, but that was over the top. So you see, here's my memory. We had this great musical experience. What I can remember is the smell of his body.
Where the hell did that come from?
Sorry. Thinking of memories that really stick. Moody Blues, it's interesting. I played with them, but my memory is a little fuzzy. And I don't know what that means. Maybe another opportunity, another moment of me just being so in the moment. I can hear the sounds, but I don't remember thinking about the sounds.
Yeah.
Whereas with Rod, I remember the visual, right? I remember him swinging the microphone and kicking the soccer balls. And this was his acoustic concerts. We had a lot of strings. And I remember turning around and kind of grooving, and he's smiling at all the string players because it looked like we're having fun. We're not like, stiff robots or anything. So that I think I remember those kinds of visual things even more than the sound. I remember the energy. Yeah. Whereas with Moody Blues, it was calmer. I do remember playing with Ray Charles, and I remember him. I'm trying to remember who the bass player was. I can't remember. It is somebody fairly well known. And I remember him stopping the rehearsal and saying, "That's the wrong note in the bass." I mean, nobody could hear this note. I don't know where and finally he played it again. He goes, "It's still wrong." And the guy fixed one little, it's like a little passing note or something. Yeah, I mean, he was a little grouchy, but I have to tell you, Ray Charles oh my goodness. And that's a person who I was really in awe of. I mean,
Yeah, no kidding.
I didn't want to play a wrong note. He could hear everything, for God's sake. I mean, everything.
Got that blind thing going
Oh
on.
my gosh, everything. So, and I remember him saying something about I remember now, the viola part was split and I had one of the lower notes and he could hear something that was a little flat. I don't know if it was me or my stand partner, but I remember him saying that F is a little too low. And I remember, dang on it, I got the F. So, but I mean, the guy's ear was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, it comes across in his recordings too, because even his background vocals and stuff like that are, it's so spot on everything, There's no doubt about it. Well, listen, kiddo, this has been great. I can't really express to you how really special a moment it was for us to intersect when we did. We're buddies, but also the fact that there's something different about putting music together with you, and also the live performance aspect really worked out well. I just hope that, that we stay active and healthy enough to where we can carry this relationship on personally and musically for many years to come. I mean, it's just so special, and, and have to give it to Stephen. It wasn't for Stephen, it would not have happened, bless his pea-picking heart,
Stephen has done a lot for me here. He got me connected with the Suzuki teachers here in this area. He got me connected with the choir at Christ and St. Luke's in Norfolk, which I still sing with. He's responsible for a lot of the connections that I've made here. So again, I think I'll keep this one.
Absolutely. Just, give him a hug and, just stay in touch with me. I know you're a busy girl. I hope that the rest of the summer and the fall works out with the Suzuki stuff, and congrats on the grant, and just love having you be in my bud. I don't mind telling you that at all. And I just look forward to a lot of good years together.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
This episode was produced by Tom Farley and Alton Riddick, edited and mixed by Alton Riddick for Edit Your Truth. On behalf of Tom, this is Alton signing off until we meet again on The Path Taken.